Hey all! So in today's tutorial, we'll be taking a deep dive into auto layout. We'll be looking at why we need it, how to use it, and also how it relates to code. So before we do anything with auto layout, let's just try to picture what life would be like without it. And to do that, we're going to recreate this card that you see on the screen here, and we'll try not to use auto layout for it at all. So let's create an empty Figma file and get started. Our card is going to have three things to it. It's going to have an image, a heading, the book name, and then subheading and author's name. So for the image, I'm just going to grab this one here. You can grab any image you want. And I'm going to make it much smaller than that, maybe 240 pixels. Now let's zoom in. Now I'm going to make my text layers. The first one is going to be heading, the book title. And this one is going to be 18 pixels. And I'm just going to use the default Figma grays here for the text color. And then my second text layer is going to be the author's name. And this one is going to be 14 pixels, and I'll make it a little bit lighter. So from here, I'm going to create the overall card frame, and I'll want it to be 240 pixels wide, and not really sure how tall it should be at this point. Then I'm going to place the image inside, and I'll place the text layers inside as well. And a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to give it a border radius of 4, and I'll give it a subtle shadow. Now I'm going to align the text layers so that they're exactly where I want them to be inside the card. So I want them to be maybe 24 pixels from the edge of the image, and then 16 pixels from the edge of the card. And then I want the spacing in between to be, I don't know, maybe 12. And then the bottom padding of the card, I want it to be way less than that, maybe like 32. So we would need to make this like tiny bit smaller. So this is my card, but now let's say I wanted to add a topic to it, like, oh, this book is focused on design. So I'm going to create a little tag, and we will insert it inside the card. So for that, I'm going to create a text layer, and let's say the tag says design, and I'll make it like much smaller, maybe just 12 pixels. And then I want it to be like navy, and I also want it to have a light background color. So I'm actually going to create a frame and just give it a very light background color. And 16 pixel border radius, and I'm going to place this text layer inside. I guess I'll make it. Now I'll adjust it here just so it's as wide as I want it to be. And I'll set it to center. So if we resize it, the text layer is always in the middle. So now I need to place the tag inside the frame. So I'm just going to take it and place it right in here. And now I need to realign everything. So I want the tag to be around 20 pixels from the image, and then, yeah, maybe around 12 from the edge of the card. And now I need to bring down the text layers, and maybe I want them to be around 12 pixels from the tag. And now I'll need to readjust my card height. And once again, I want it to be around 32. So now our card has a tag, But let's say we wanted to add another one to it, like this book is about design and it's also about culture. So I'm going to copy and paste this tag and just write culture. And I'm just going to make sure that it's aligned with the design tag, and the spacing between them is the one that I want. So let's say 4 pixels. And then I look at this card and I'm like, well, actually, maybe I should be more specific. Like, this is not just any design book. Like, this book is specifically about urban design. So I want to adjust this first tag to say urban design instead of design. I'm going to write urban design. And now I need to readjust the height. So let me move this one over. Just place it in the center. And then I need to realign this two again. That's our card without auto layout. As I was creating this card, you could probably tell throughout the process that there were a lot of minor inconveniences that came up. Like, I needed to constantly keep alignment in mind, and every time I wanted to make a modification, like adding a tag or like adding another tag or like renaming something, I needed to adjust everything around it. So in the next part of this video, we're going to take a look at how we can recreate this card using auto layout and how it's going to help us address these minor inconveniences. I'm going to keep this first card right here for reference, and now we're going to take exactly the same steps that we did to create this card, but do it with the auto layout instead. So first I'm just going to copy image, have my image here, and I could essentially just copy these two text layers. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these ones into their own auto layout frame. So to do that, you can either select both of these and then go to the design tab here and then click the plus next to auto layout. Or you can use a shortcut and you can just select this two and then do Shift plus A, and the auto layout frame will be added. So from here, what you can do is you can go ahead and adjust the spacing that you want. It could be 12, could be 8, anything you want really. And the great thing is that you no longer need to worry about accidentally messing it up. The only thing that you could really do is accidentally swap the places, but it's pretty obvious. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this frame and the picture, and we're going to combine them in their own auto layout frame. So one great thing about auto layout is that you can use that as your parent frame. You don't need to create an extra frame to house all your elements inside it. So I added auto layout to these two layers. And now what I can do, I can give it a fill of white. Instead of being aligned to center, I want it to be aligned to the left. And I can set the padding to 24. I can do the border radius, and I can do the shadow. And what else? I'll need to do the border radius for the image here. And now I'm going to give it the bottom padding of 32. All I needed to do for it is just to write 32. I didn't need to try to adjust the height of the frame. And then another thing that I want to do is to give this two text layers a horizontal padding. So I want it to be 16. Now we're going to add our tags, and actually we're going to create our tags as their own individual auto layout frames. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a text layer here and just write design. And just for this text layer, I'm going to do Shift A to add auto layout. And let's just add the fill right away so you can see what's happening. So here's our light blue fill. And from here, I have a total control of the padding. I can set it to 2 vertical padding, and then maybe I want 6 horizontal. We can do our border radius, and then we can change our text color to navy. And that's our tag. So one thing that's great about this is that we don't need to do any tiny motions to try to get the padding right. For example, here, in order to get the padding right, we had to really tinker around with the width. And then when we created a different tag, we had to repeat the whole process. It really isn't a fun thing to do when you have a lot of modifications. But here, all we did is just added an auto layout frame and then set the padding. And once again, we don't need to worry about messing it up. So from here, I'm going to take this tag and place it inside. And I could actually place it right inside the auto layout with 2 text layers. And now we can create our second one. So the second one was culture. I'm just going to adjust the name. And as you can see, the width adjusts automatically. And now I want to combine these two into their own auto layout frame. And I'm going to set the direction to be horizontal. And I want the spacing to be just 4. And then maybe the last thing I'm going to do is actually want the tags to be closer to the image. So I'll set the spacing to 20. And I also want the tags to be closer to the edge of the image. So what I'm going to do, I will combine the text layers again into their own separate auto layout frame. And I'll set the horizontal padding for all these 3 layers here to 12. And I'll add 4 to just the text layer so they have a little more offset. And the last thing that we did here is that we changed the name from design to urban design. We're going to do the same thing here. And as you can see, all I needed to do is just add the word urban and everything else readjusted accordingly. I hope that after observing me create these 2 cards, one without and one with auto layout, you're more or less convinced that auto layout can make a designer's job much easier and faster. Of course, it takes some time to get the hang of it, and it's okay if at first you feel like it inhibits your process and doesn't help it. I would say that when you're just learning it, it's still fine to start your design exploration without auto layout, and then maybe once you start identifying patterns or structures, you can start incorporating auto layout in them. So aside from making designers' job easier, another thing about auto layout is that it also helps to bridge the gap between design and code. And in fact, auto layout was inspired by CSS Flexbox layout model. To demonstrate the similarities, what I'm going to do now is that I'm actually going to recreate this card in code. And the one thing I'm going to do before we get to that point is I'm actually going to delete this first card that we didn't use the auto layout for. And I'm going to rename the layers of this card here, just so it's easier to reference later on. So this overall frame, I'm going to call it just card. This one is going to be card image. Then let's do this one first. Let's do card tags, card tag. This one is also a tag. This one, card info, card title, card subtitle, and this overall one could be card content. As I'll be recreating this card in code, I will try to follow the same structure that we have here, but please keep in mind that it's just one way to do auto layout and just one way to structure it in code. There are obviously several other combinations that could work just as well. For the code demo, I'm going to be using an online code editor called CodePen, and pretty much I just have an empty file here. There are a couple of things that I already added to styles, just some variables for the colors and a few little styling things. So nothing fancy. And now we're just going to recreate our card in code. So the first thing I'm going to start is creating our overall container for the card. So, and this one is going to, I'll give it a class of card to match our Figma card. And then we're going to have an image that will give a class of card image. And then we'll add the source later. Then we're going to have a container for the card content. And inside that card content, we're going to have an unordered list of our tags. And we'll have two list items. So our first one is urban design. And our second one is going to be culture. And then after our tags, we're going to have another container that's going to be card info. And inside card info, we're going to have a heading. And let's say that's going to be our only main heading on the page, so we can give it an H1 tag. And it's going to be card title. And then we'll have a second heading, which is going to be our card subtitle, I think it was. Now we're going to add source to the image. It's going to be really big. Then we can add an alt text. So now let's format this. And now as you can see, we can compare this to Figma. We have exactly the same structure. We have an overall card. We have a card image, card content, and inside the card content we have the tags, the info with the title and subtitle, and then the tags list has 2 tags inside it. Now that we have our structure in place, we can start styling this up so it looks more like Figma as well. And I'm going to begin by giving the card an overall width of 240 pixels. And then for the card image, I'm going to set its width to 100%. For the card, we can also give a background color of white. And then border radius of 4. Now we're going to give the border radius to the image of 4 for the 2 upper corners. And we'll give this like a box shadow. And a couple more things, a couple more defaults that I want to have is for the unordered list. I want to have the list style none. And then it's margin. Now let's style up our text layers. So H1, which is also card title. I'm going to have a font size 125 rem. So rems is something that we currently can't use in Figma. We can only use pixels. But here, since we're actually coding this, we will use rems. And for a color, we're going to do the and then for our second one, the card subtitle, the font size is just going to be 1 rem. And then the color, gray, 700. One thing we're going to add to the card is the bottom padding of 32 pixels or 2 rems if you're taking 16 pixels as the base. And now we're going to style this tags here. So I'm going to go to the bottom here and do the card tag. And font size, it's already 1 rem, so we'll just make sure that it really is. And the color is going to be bar blue 700. And background color is blue 25. And now we're going to, I'm going to take this and bring it right above here and add it, just specify that we're dealing with the tags overall here. And I'm going to set the tags to display flex, which is the Flexbox model we were talking about before. And then if you remember in Figma here, we wanted to have like 4 pixel spacing in between the 2 tags. So we'll do gap of 4 pixels, or in RAMS it's actually going to translate to 1/4. And then remember here we also want to have padding for each tag. So we want 2 pixel vertical, 6 pixel horizontal. And we also had a border radius of 16. Actually, let's update this to RAMS as well. And now we can do our text layers here. So that's going to be a card info, and we'll set it to display flex. And the default flex direction is the row, but we actually want it to be in a column. And then we can set the gap to half rem, which is 8 pixels. And then for the overall card content, which is the tags and the text layers, we also want to display flex and flex direction column. So now we can do the padding, and we could actually do both vertical and horizontal padding to bring to create some more space here between the tags and the image. But we're actually going to add an overall flex column layout on the whole card a little bit later on. So we're just going to do the horizontal padding. And for that one, we're going to do 12 pixels or 3/4 rems horizontal. So the last thing we're going to do is for the overall card, we're also going to set it to display flex, and we'll do flex direction column. And then here we'll do a gap 1.25 rems, 20 pixels. And we also want to have space between the tags and the text layers. So we're going to return to the card content and do the gap of 0.75 rems. And maybe one more thing I'll do is slightly increase the width of the card. Actually, that should be in RAMS as well. And one other thing I realized is that I had the wrong number for the gray color here. One last thing that I'm going to do in code here is I'll just take this card content and I'll move it right above the card image, just so that the code order makes more sense. And so that's our card. So I hope that watching this coding demo helped you see the similarities between auto layout and Figma and actual coding. And I hope that the tutorial overall helped you gain insight into why auto layout exists and how you can use it. So one last thing before we end this video is that I want to do a quick auto layout overview at glance, just so that you are aware of all the capabilities that it has. So I made this little cheat sheet, which we're going to go over now, and I am going to link the link to this file in the description afterwards, so you can grab it and check it out yourself too. But let's go through this. So the first one is obviously the direction. We have the horizontal direction, and then we have the vertical direction. So pretty easy. Then we have padding. So this example here does not have any horizontal or vertical padding, but this one does. And of course you can only have horizontal padding or only vertical. And you can also have different values. You can have, let's say, 24 on the left and 40 on the right. Next thing we have is the spacing mode. So we can always ensure that the spacing between the elements in the auto layout frame is, let's say, 24 pixels. Or we can make it more dynamic and have space in between, which means that it depends on the width of the container, and the space is going to be distributed evenly between the elements inside it. So if I have this frame here and I resize it, as you can see, nothing happens with the spacing between these two squares. But then if I have this frame and resize it, the spacing changes. And if we increase the number of elements, the spacing will continue to dynamically adjust as we resize the container. Our next one is strokes. So by default, the strokes are excluded from auto layout frame. If you look closely, you can see that the strokes go beyond the frame, but then you can change it by going to the auto layout settings and changing the strokes to be included in the layout, like in this example here. So they're included. So next one is stacking, and actually you can have negative spacing between the elements. So here, for example, I have -64. And what stacking means, it's pretty much just allows you to configure which element you want to be on top in case you have this negative spacing. So the default is the last element goes on top, as you can see here. But again, you can switch it by going to auto layout settings and changing it to first on top. And then the last thing is the alignment. So from the settings here, you can have top alignment, center alignment, or bottom alignment. But one alignment that's kind of hidden from the main settings here is the text baseline. So what you could do, if you have text layers inside your layers, you can go once again to the three dots here and then set it to text baseline alignment. And lastly, of course, I need to mention the overall container settings itself. So first, you can have it set to hug the elements, kind of like right here. Then you can also have it to fixed. And lastly, I can have it set to fill the container. So let's say this top container, I make it bigger, and I want the child container to resize with it. I can set it to fill. And now when I change the parent container, it resizes. And this is very useful if you have the elements set to space in between, because now they will resize as well. Alright, so that's everything that I wanted to go over in this video. Let me know what you think about the hybrid of Figma and code videos together, or whether you would like to see more like code CSS videos. I'll link this Figma file and the CodePen in the description. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time. Bye!